Hi, it's Ben Tiong from Learn ASP. Welcome to our Q&A zone where we answer some of your most pressing questions. Questions about health, fitness, nutrition, body composition, and lifestyle, our 5 main pillars. So sit back, enjoy, and know that this information that you're taking in will be your secret weapon to the best you. Enjoy the episode ahead.
How do you gain weight if you're vegetarian?
How do you gain weight if you're a vegetarian? It's actually, it is not hard to gain weight if you're a vegetarian, if you're eating in excess of calories. All right, so at the end of the day, weight gain, just the term weight gain means that you have to essentially have more calories, take in more calories than what your body can burn. The problem with that, with vegetarians, is that a lot of the foods that you may take in, especially, and there are different classes of vegetarians. For those of you that may not understand or know this, a vegetarian is not, it's classified as someone that would eat vegetables, but they will also eat things like eggs. They would also eat things like milk, which are animal produce and products. They may also have things like honey, which are from bees. But there are certain classes of vegetarians that would choose to have just vegetables without any eggs, or just vegetables without any milk, any sort of lactose products, right? So there are different classes there. Now, if you are just a vegetarian in general, that means you eat animal products per se, like eggs, like honey, like milk, and then you take a whole bunch of vegetables, but you don't touch meat itself. Your calories need to come from the foods that you take in. If your overall daily calories, the intake of calories, exceed what your body burns, you will put on weight. That's what it is. Now, your question though is it regards to weight gain or is it in regards to muscle gain? There's a big difference down there, right? To put on weight is not difficult. To put on lean muscle is going to be a bit of a challenge. So to put on weight, all you got to do is eat more than your body burns or your body expends. And eating more, typically, if your goal is just to put on weight without the health aspect of it, then you eat whatever comes in sight. In fact, you eat what is high in calories, probably lower in nutrients. That's what a lot of people who are trying to hit their macros, for example, if they don't have a large appetite, but they need to hit their macronutrients, that means they hit the carbs, fats, and proteins, then a lot of them will eat a lot of these high calorie foods that are very low in nutrient content. So not whole foods. You're talking here about processed foods because it's easy to put down, it's calorie dense, and they just want to hit the calories. But if you're someone who's looking at a perspective where you want to take health into account, then it's going to be harder because a lot of your calories come from whole foods. That means foods as nature intended. You got your vegetables, your grains, your legumes. Foods as nature intended tends to be a lot more nutrient dense, but it's also more difficult to hit your calories. So here's a good tip for you. If you're a vegetarian and you want to increase your weight, I prefer to do it from a healthy perspective. It's important to kind of understand you are the way you are right now, eating whatever you're eating. If you want to put on weight, rule number 1, you got to eat more. That's for sure. Okay, so understand what you're eating now. If you are not eating on a consistent basis, and that means that some days you eat a lot and some days you don't eat a lot, that is what is not causing you to put on the weight. It is not typically the amount of food that you're looking at, because that food kind of changes. What is going on is that you are not being consistent in putting a certain amount of calories into your body on a daily basis. So consistency counts. So rule number 1 is you need to be able to be consistent in putting in a certain amount of calories in your body and be aware of it. So track what you're eating on a daily basis. If you don't want to count macronutrients, that's not a problem. So you don't want to count your fats, carbs, and proteins, that's okay. Eyeball the food and go, if you're having that every day, roughly, increase those portions. That's for 1. Simply just by increasing those portions, you're guaranteeing that you're increasing the amount of calories that's coming in. Secondly, use an enzyme or a supplement that has a spectrum of enzymes in there. Enzymes are critical because they help to break down the foods that you take in. A lot of plant foods, for example, especially if you're taking in whole plant foods that are raw, your body doesn't have the capacity to break down all that cellulose or that fiber. Okay, so the cellulose is the plant cell wall or the fiber. Humans don't have that effective capacity to do it. Cows do. And cows can extract the nutrients from there. We don't, unfortunately. So a lot of these insoluble fibers come out of us. Now, these fibers are heavy weight. They make you fuller for longer. That's why people take in more vegetables, more fiber, but you're not able to extract enough of those nutrients. So you want to take in more soluble fibers. Starches is going to help. Potatoes, grains, your rices are definitely going to help. Your legumes and your beans are going to help. Make sure you increase those because those are heavier in nutrient density, but also at the same time, you're able to digest and take in a lot more compared to just fibrous or cellulose. So increase your starches, but take in an enzyme that helps you to break it down more effectively. So that's important. All right, so a good digestive or a spectrum of enzymes. Typically, if you are a plant-based person, your spectrum of enzymes would be lower in protein, proteases, higher in carb-based enzymes. So you take in a lot more amylases, as well as fats, especially if you're taking in more coconut oil. So that's the next point. The next point is that if you're a plant-based person and you want to increase your calories, a good way to do it is increase the amount of plant oils that you're taking in, because oils have a higher density in terms of caloric count. So increase things like your coconut oils, increase things like your butters, your nut butters if you want to, nuts that you're taking in. Just make sure that your oils are from a good source. All right, and again, if you're taking in more oils, increase the amount of lipases that you're taking in. That's the kind of enzymes that break down fat. So taking a good enzyme spectrum with that.
How do you burn fat and increase muscle mass at the same time?
I find personally, in order to make your body efficient in putting on muscle and maintaining a low body fat percentage or losing fat at the same time, first and foremost, two things that I look at. One of them is body composition. The other one is recovery, right? So body composition wise, there is an optimal leanness that I like to get my clients to. And this optimal leanness, let's say I'm training someone who has a high percentage of body fat. I train him hard in the gym, okay? At that point of time, this particular person, if let's say he came to me with a high body fat percentage and hardly ever trained, if I started training him, just by training, I don't necessarily need to change his nutrition too much. Just by adding in some added load and strain in his muscles, he will, by default, put on muscle and lose fat. That already is a fact. Why? Because the muscles have to adapt to any sort of new loading that you've given to it, right? So when that happens, that person will already be in the process of putting on muscle and losing fat at the same time. The problem with that is, at a particular leanness, for example, this is where someone who is, let's say, at 16% body fat comes and says that, I want to put on more muscle and I want to lose more body fat. There is a particular leanness where it gets a little bit more difficult to do that. So this is the point where the person needs to consider, do they want to increase their calories significantly to actually train? And when they do increase their calories, that also means that they put on a certain amount of body fat, right? And as they put on a certain amount of body fat, they will also put on a certain amount of muscle. But that body fat to muscle ratio is what we're considering. Because at any time of the workout, to me, if let's say you're training for aesthetics, how your body looks, it is critical that at any one point of time, your ability to put on muscle exceeds the ability for your body to store fat. Does it make sense? So if you can put on more muscle and store less fat, that's the route that you want. And I find that most people can do that at a specific body fat percentage. Okay, so with my clients, I kind of make sure that they hover in between that specific body fat percentage. Because if they are, if for example, they're past that particular body fat percentage, then what tends to happen if they keep increasing their calories is that they tend to put on more fat and put on less muscle. They're still putting on muscle, but less muscle, and they put on more fat. This is when your trade-off becomes important. Are you willing to put on more fat are you willing to put on more fat when you put on just that little bit of muscle? That's kind of the trade-off that you need to consider. All right, so I think this question here is just such a broad question. I don't know who's asking it, but if you're asking this question, the answer lies in the ASP seminars. You need to go and have a look at it, because I could spend a few hours explaining details to you. Please go look at learn-asp.com, and you will see a whole bunch of seminars down there. Under physique transformation, you would see seminars to teach you how to put on muscle and lose fat at the same time.
Hi Ben, Ashraf here. I've been on calorie deficit of 20% for 6 weeks, and I started to feel hungry all the time. After 1 day of refeed, I still feel very hungry. Is that a good sign? What should I do? Increase my caloric intake or stay on caloric deficit until my body reach a certain desired body fat percentage?
No, because the number one function of your body's adaptation, Ashraf. So if you are eating at a 20% calorie deficit, that is good for a certain period of time, and that time differs from individual to individual. So in your case, that period of time could be 6 days, could be 7 days. Now, after 7 days, your body plateaus. That means it's adapted to that lower caloric intake. Unless you keep lowering your calories, your body won't change significantly. This is exactly why a cheat meal or refeed meal comes in, because it kind of gives the body a break that it needs. It tricks the body into increasing its metabolism once again, because as you drop your calories, understand that your natural metabolism will also start to decrease. Why? Because it's got to meet the amount of calories that comes in. Yeah. So the way you judge what you're doing, Ashraf, is to look at your physique on a daily basis and see how it's changing. If you are not changing anymore, that means you're still holding the same amount of body fat, then your point now is not. You get two choices. One choice is increase your calories. The other one is to decrease your calories. You cannot stay on 20% because it doesn't change. So if, let's say, you're on a 5,000 calorie diet, 5,000 calories right now, and you went on a 20% deficit, if you wanted to lean down even more, I will still tell you to go on a deficit, because being on 4,000 plus calories is not really a deficit. Okay, unless you are a 7-foot person that weighs 180 kilos. Apart from that, you're not in a deficit. So you still can go down more. However, if you are a person that is on 900 calories and dropping 20%, my suggestion is you do not drop anymore, but you increase calories very, very slowly. So what you need to work on is not caloric drop, it's working on your ability to utilize calories, which is your metabolism. All right, so if you've only had one refeed meal or one cheat meal, from the sounds of your question, during that 6 weeks, that's a problem. You want to be putting in a refeed meal, especially if your body plateaus more regularly or faster. You need to put in a refeed meal faster, because that's the one thing that will spark up your metabolism. So for people who always think that if I diet down for 6 weeks and I go hard for 6 weeks, that's going to help me lose fat effectively. No, that's actually going to stress you out effectively. That's what it does. Typically, the max I like to give my clients for a period of following a nutrition plan is 3 weeks, 21 days, but that's the start of the nutrition plan. That's not in the middle. So typically I start them with 21 days, because God knows prior to that 21 days, they could be eating a whole bunch of shit. So when they come to me, it's a blank slate. So I start them with at least 14 to 21 days, depending on the individual. And then after that, if I put in a refeed, it's a refeed every single week on a minimum basis. There are clients where I'll put in 2 to 3 refeeds a week, depending on how their body adapts. The faster their body adapts, the more I add in refeeds, because the refeed is there to help spark the metabolism.
Guys, I really appreciate your time in watching today's episode. If you liked what you have seen and are able to utilize that information well, make sure that you leave a comment below, like, subscribe, and hop on to our masterclass courses in our Learn ASP site. Lots of information waiting for you. I'll see you in the next episode.